globally. UW River Falls, is a proven contributor to this region. We are a founding member of the St. Croix Valley Business Innovation Center. The center fosters entrepreneurship and provides business incubation and development opportunities to enhance business success and really create a more vibrant regional economy. We also develop a culture of student innovation through programs like the Innovation Challenge, which is a student startup competition that rewards new and unique business ideas. UWRF is fortunate to have the College of Business and Economics, which is a proven leader in innovation, as well as other programs and initiatives that align with our core values of innovation. Also, the College of Agriculture, Food, and Environmental Sciences participates in the statewide Dairy Innovation Hub, and that generates new discoveries and provides new tools and resources to benefit Wisconsin's dairy industry. Soon, we will be the home also of the Science and Technology Innovation Center. And SciTech will house biology, chemistry, physics, psychological sciences, and a unique university business collaboration space that's aimed at supporting STEM business expansion and economic growth. So it was really exciting times here at UWRF. We're committed to creating a culture that provides high quality opportunities for our students to enhance their problem solving, their creative thinking, and their self-starting skills. The Innovator in Residence now showcases innovators who exemplify those skills. And it's with great pleasure that I introduce today's Innovator in Residence and 2016 UWRF alum, Michael Mader. Mader's vision of helping homeless youth inspired the creation of Hippie Feet in 2016, after winning the 2015 UWRF Innovation Challenge. The Minneapolis-based company is dedicated to supporting the homeless. Using a portion of all proceeds, the sock and apparel brand provides transitional employment to homeless youth. Through a 6-month job training program, Hippie Feet's packaging, embroidery, and screening printing is done by homeless youth ages 16 to 24. Hippie Feet's aim is to provide income, opportunity, job training, and giving in a way that is both earned and respects human dignity. And I want to add that I'm wearing a pair of Hippie Feet right now, socks, and those weren't just the free giveaway ones. There's an actual purchase going on Michael's website, looking at all the great things that they're doing. And I want to say, you're helping the homeless, and you're also getting a very comfortable pair of socks that are cute and interesting patterns, and they're comfortable. So it's a win-win-win all the way around. So please join me now in welcoming Hippie Feet co-founder and CEO and UWRF alum, Michael Mader. Michael, it's all yours.
Well, thank you, Ramir, for that introduction, and thank you to everyone else for having me today. It is a pleasure to be able to speak with the UWRF community. As always, I've always found that I've had a tremendous amount of support coming from the faculty, staff, advisors at UWRF, and it's support that I continue to leverage today. And it's helped get me to where I am with Hippie Feet, now 6 years after graduation. So I like to tell this story of Hippie Feet. I'll take you back to the original inception, which happened while I was a student at River Falls. So I like to tell people I was a traditional college student, in the sense that I was more so interested in the social elements of college than I was the actual educational component. I was like that probably up until my senior year of college, but I wasn't really interested in my studies until I had experienced an accident during the fall semester of my senior year. So I used to be a longboarder, little skater boy. I had hair that was longer than it is now, and I was not the most intelligent skater out there, as I never wore a helmet. I like to go down really big hills really fast, and I fell off of one of those hills one day and unfortunately landed face first in the curb. That accident fractured my orbital bone in a few places, and it cracked the inside of my skull. I was then forced to drop out of school that fall semester. I was working as a bartender in Hudson, Wisconsin at the time. I had to quit my job, and I was all of a sudden unable to provide for myself for a 3-month period of time. During that period of recovery, I recognized how easily it would have been for myself to fall into homelessness had I not had a support group. Support group meaning family and friends that were willing to step up during my time of need. My family paid my rent. They bought my groceries. My friends went and picked up my groceries from the grocery store and dropped them off my apartment in Hudson, Wisconsin. They would drive me to my doctor's appointments. They would take me to the Willow River State Park so I could get out and go on a hike and get some fresh air in the later months of my recovery. And it was this realization that, made me kind of recognize how fortunate I was to have a support system. And I realized that those that did not have the fortune that I did, or that didn't have the support group that I did, most likely would have ended up on the streets after an accident like that. Felt really lucky to have this support system around me and wanted to begin to work on something, to build something that could act as a support system for those that were less fortunate than I. That is where the original idea for Hippie Feet came. So after I had, a month and a half of recovery under my belt and, was realizing that I could re-enroll in school that following spring semester, I took this idea of mine for a company called Hippie Feet. Originally started as a buy one, give one sock donation company, where for every pair of socks that we would sell, we would give one to a local homeless shelter or person in need. I took that idea to a couple of professors and advisors at UWRF and said, I got an idea and I want to turn it into reality. And I also want to graduate on time. I had a couple of people look at me funny, tell me no way I was going to pull that off. And then I was fortunately able to partner up with some of my favorite professors at the time who said, yeah, you're a little crazy for wanting to do this, but we'll set you up with these systems that at least give you a shot at pulling this off. One of those systems was the Innovation Challenge at River Falls. So there I was, 30 credits left to finish my college career, to graduate on time that spring, and this really ambitious idea to start a sock company that could help people experiencing homelessness. I was able to enroll in the Innovation Challenge and began to study the lean business model methodology. That has proved to be one of the most fantastic educations I've ever gotten. I still use the lean business methodology today, and we'll touch up on that in a little bit here. So I was able to compete at the River Falls Local Innovation Challenge. I took second place out of the 2 teams that competed that year, but thankfully for me, you only needed to compete to place second to qualify for the Wisconsin Big Idea Tournament, the state tournament in Madison, Wisconsin that year. So there I was, I had this idea and I had about another month and a half to refine said idea, to refine my business model pitch, to try and win some funding to take Hippie Feet and actually turn it into a viable company later after graduation. I was able to refine my pitch and took first out of, I believe, 13 or 14 teams that competed in the Wisconsin Big Idea Tournament that year. And they handed a 23-year-old a $23,000 check to say, all right, you got this idea, here's some money, go make this idea a reality. At the time, I thought that was a lot of money. And having a lot of ambition, later that summer, I took that kind of seed funding and began to search for manufacturers and partners to set up this business. We were able to launch that company in September of 2016, so just a few months after graduating from college. Since launching Hippie Feet, we've continued to lean on the education that I was provided through the Innovation Challenge and through studying the Lean Business Model competition to make a few pivots along the way. So we kept up with that 1-for-1 sock donation model through the first 2 years of being in business. We donated 20,000 pairs of socks under that model. And my business partner, Sam Harper, and I, we were actually the ones that were going to these homeless shelters and going out to the streets of Minneapolis and St. Paul and actually distributing these socks. And in doing so, we got to have a lot of conversations with the homeless community. We'd ask them, do you need this pair of socks? The answer was always a yes, but then they'd say, hey, I also need a job and a house and healthcare and all these things that we were just not able to provide. So our idea of creating this support system for the homeless community really kind of fell short. All we were doing was giving people socks, and we saw that as an effort that addressed a symptom of homelessness, but didn't actually address the underlying causes. We felt as if we were slapping a Band-Aid on this really, really complex issue and then running, good marketing to sell more socks and then donate more socks as a result. But that didn't feel very supportive. And so we knew that we needed to make a change that would then allow us to have a deeper impact on the lives of people experiencing homelessness. So in 2018, we began to pilot an employment program that we titled Pop-Up Employment. That was where we went directly into youth homeless shelters and began to offer jobs to the folks that were visiting those shelters on the spot. We were hiring them to do all of our sock packaging. Now we received socks from our manufacturers unpackaged in bags of a dozen. We brought those bags to a youth homeless shelter in Minneapolis and said, we're going to be here for 6 hours today. If you want to work that full 6 hours, great. If you want to work just an hour, also great. We'll pay you cash on the spot. That way, these young folks were earning an income, which we saw as an alternative to survival cash, which survival cash is any income that somebody's going to earn on the street, which is often done in a legal manner, or in a way that is kind of undignified to a human being. Now that was an awesome program. It did provide that alternative to survival cash, although our business was growing, and that model was not able to keep up with the scale of growth that Hippie Feet was seeing at that time. So at the start of 2020, right around May, after we had some information about the pandemic and how the virus was contracted, the effectiveness of masks and social distancing, all that fun stuff, we decided to in-house our employment program entirely. So we brought young folks into a 6-month job training program. This was then the third pivot we had made to our mission since launching in 2016. We decided to in-house that program, turn it into a 6-month job training program that was not just able to provide these young folks with an income, but provide them with some soft skills. Things like, can you show up on time? Can you work in a team? Can you communicate properly with your manager? All the things that we kind of take for granted as young people that are just kind of thrust into the workforce, whereas the folks that we were employing didn't really have a whole lot of work experience. So that was a model that we operated from 2020 to 2022, the start of this year. Hippie Feet is again making our now 4th pivot to our model. Again, we learned that making pivots is an absolute must as an entrepreneur, but having the lean startup methodology background that I learned at the Innovation Challenge at River Falls, that is something that we saw as just a regular part of our practice. We always wanted to be making changes to our business in a way that was allowing us not just to grow, but to have a deeper impact on those experiencing homelessness, specifically young people experiencing homelessness. So this program that we are launching now in 2022 is actually going to be a percentage of profits donated model. Hippie Feet is going to give half of our profits to nonprofit organizations that are working with the youth homeless community. The reason that we are making this change is we are going to be able to have a equal or greater financial contribution to young people experiencing homelessness that our employment model was currently offering. But we're also going to be able to expand our geographical footprint. We're going to be able to give to more cities and more states that have issues with youth homelessness the same way that Minnesota has. And we're going to be able to kind of rely on the experts. I have a marketing degree from River Falls. That is something that I'm very proud of, but unfortunately I don't have a social work background. So to be able to really have the deepest impact on youth experiencing homelessness, we've determined that we need to rely on the experts, those that have the educational background to deal with this population, and that Hippie Feet is better off selling socks and then funding organizations that are already doing this type of work. So we're really excited for that upcoming change. And again, it's a change that we're making for the betterment of both business, but for the mission to provide opportunities to youth experiencing homelessness. And something that we learned a lot about, pivoting from my experience with the Innovation Challenge. That is one of the kind of key focal points of the Innovation Challenge is recognizing when to make pivots, and then having conversations with your customers prior to making those pivots. So for the last 3 months, I've been speaking with as many people I can, including the College of Business and Economics classes, the CBE 100 and CBE 300 students at River Falls, getting all of their feedback about this change, trying to hear in their words how they want to have Hippie Feet message this change as well. So something that we've really leaned into and really focused on after the Innovation Challenge is the idea of getting your customers' feedback and using that feedback to make implementations to your business. We not only do it for the mission and inform our mission-based decisions off of the feedback that we get from our customers, but we do so with products as well. We are releasing our spring-summer product collection in April of 2022 here. And there is a good chunk of products that we designed directly based on the feedback that we solicited from our customers. You know, we were collecting survey information at the end of a checkout when someone bought products from us for about 6 months to say, what else do you want to see Hippie Feet make? You know, we're really good at making socks, but what other types of socks do you want to see? What other types of apparel products do you want to see? So we collected a bunch of information from our customers and are using that information to inform our decisions moving forward. And I think that is probably one of the key learnings that I took from the Innovation Challenge is making decisions that are based on your customers' input and feedback, and then being ready to make pivots based on that feedback. You know, we are trying to not just build a profitable company, but we're trying to build a company that is able to have a deep impact on youth experiencing homelessness. You know, our goal is to actually change individual outcomes, and we've been able to do so far. Through the employment program, we have seen young folks come into our 6-month job training program and leave at the end of it fully housed, fully employed, pursuing education, and really kind of self-sufficient. And that is the goal of Hippie Feet, whether it's through our employment program previously, thank you, or whether it's through our newfound mission to donate half our profits to causes supporting youth homelessness. Now, we really want to have our business be a tool for good and be a tool that is very measurable. You know, we want to be able to see the impact and the results that we're having as a company, and not just through our profits, but through the kind of opportunities and impact that we're having on youth experiencing homelessness. So yeah, that's my story, and kind of touches on my time at the with River Falls and through the Innovation Challenge. I would love to open it up to any questions that you all might have, whether it's about Hippie Feet specifically, or if it's about kind of the Innovation Challenge and how to leverage that program for success, real life success in a business later down the road.
Raise your hand if you would like to ask a question, or you can put it in the chat. You can also go ahead and unmute yourself if you would like. Don Hukai has a question. Go ahead.
Hi, Michael. I'm going to ask you for a pivot. 6 years out, what do you wish you had known 6 years ago, or would have learned in our program that maybe we didn't cover? And that will let us pivot and make things better going forward as well. Thank you.
Yeah. Great question. I think something that I kind of learned on the fly is the idea of developing relationships, not necessarily through like your traditional idea of networking where you're, you know, at a cocktail related event and just kind of shooting the shit with people that you're near and dear to, but the idea of developing relationships over time. That's something that I started to see the value of probably year 2 in Hippie Feet, where we had made a couple of connections that there was really no way that our 2 businesses or our 2 organizations fit well together. You know, the puzzle pieces didn't align, but I saw the potential for them to later down the road, and simply recognizing that potential, I nourished relationships. And it's something where looking back, it kind of seems obvious, but it wasn't something that I necessarily paid a lot of attention to while at River Falls. I mean, I was at that point in my college career, I was very heads down and trying to graduate on time and trying to, you know, solidify this career with entrepreneurship. And I probably lost sight of that community building and that relationship building, and doing so in a way that is not just immediately transactional, but doing so in a way that's, you know, hey, how can I scratch your back today if you'll scratch my back later down the road? I think that is something that I've learned just kind of by doing it. And I think if the Innovation Challenge had more focus on the relationship building long term, I think that would have been a benefit to me for sure.
Some people are asking, are there things that you wish you would have implemented earlier? I'm assuming this means like Hippie Feet and in the company, or maybe during the process.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you that I wish I could honestly say that I wish we had implemented this new model of ours earlier, you know, to donate half our profits to organizations that are supporting youth experiencing homelessness. But I never thought to do so. The idea had come up certainly a couple of times in the past few years, but we always wanted to stick to our guns with the employment model. And the reason why is we saw the impact of it. You know, we saw how by giving a young person a stable form of income, and kind of a community to show up to every single day for work, we saw how that had like a tremendous impact on their lives. And so we wanted to continue to buy into that impact. However, in order for us to run that program and to keep that program alive and at a scale that it could keep up with Hippie Feet's back end operations, that program was costly. And it was something where we started to realize that we were not giving as much in terms of wages to the young folks that we would have liked to. We started to realize that there were situations where we were covering cost of inefficiencies that that program produced. Some of these young folks were worried about where they were going to sleep that night, and less worried about performing at a standard level in a work environment. And we also had to bring on experts to kind of manage the employment program. We hired a social worker in 2021 to come in and manage that program, so that it was a person that had more lived experiences, more relatable experiences to the youth that we were providing support to. But I say that I wish I would have recognized it. But at the same time, I think having gone through the process of starting with a buy one, give one stock donation model, realizing, hey, this isn't doing enough, transitioning to the pop-up employment program, where we're providing short-term employment opportunities, recognizing, hey, that wasn't very impactful either. And then going to this 6-month job training program, the most impactful in terms of the ability to change individual outcomes. We had to kind of go through the process to realize, this is how we're able to have an impact. And it was specifically through providing wages to youth experiencing homelessness, and then recognizing, hey, if we actually allocated these funds towards organizations that are already doing this work and then some, we'll still be able to have an equal, if not greater, impact dollar for dollar, and in terms of individual lives that we are able to touch. So it's something that I wish we would have implemented this model earlier, but I recognize that we probably wouldn't have been able to do it justice the way that we can now, to say that, hey, we've tried all these things already. We can say that we are experts in terms of our efforts to help youth experiencing homelessness, but only through that effort did we recognize the best way to truly have an impact. And so I think, I won't change anything about our mission. I just know that it's something that if we would have recognized earlier, we would have been able to have an even larger impact financially in terms of how much money we've been able to allocate towards youth experiencing homelessness since adopting an employment model back in 2018. 50% of profits, Renee, we're going to give half our profits to organizations supporting youth experiencing homelessness.
Kind of like Tammy talks about connection with social work goals, and you said you hired a social worker now. How is this pivot going to allow you to expand on that opportunity? And how do you envision a partnership growing between those two sides of the business, the true business side and the true kind of mission orientated side?
Yeah. Well, I think because we've gone through the process of trying to implement employment programs on our own, trying to do some of the work that typically nonprofits do when it comes to youth experiencing homelessness, it makes us a better kind of vetter of nonprofits to support. I think that we can identify organizations that we want to give to and organizations that we don't want to give to, because of looking at their annual reports and determining how much of their donation pool is actually ending up with the youth experiencing homelessness, whether it's in wages or whether it's in meals, beds, clothing items, whatever these young folks are needing, healthcare support, therapy, this, that, or the other. We're able to take a look at kind of a nonprofit's revenue and determine, hey, these guys are actually efficiently using these funds, and then confidently make donations to those organizations. I see another benefit of this newfound model as being, we can expand our footprint. Historically, if you bought a pair of socks from us in California, which is the #2 revenue producing state for Hippie Feet, we're giving a job to somebody in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Whereas today, if you buy a pair of socks from us in LA, we'll actually be able to have a nonprofit partner that we are going to be funding out in LA. So you're now able to have a more immediate impact in your community. So with that in mind, we're targeting areas that have high population of both traditional population and homeless population. So those communities include Austin, Texas, New York City, Seattle, LA, Denver, and then Minneapolis and St. Paul is still here. So being able to expand our geographical footprint to not just focus our efforts here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, but to start to reward our customers from other parts of the country and to approach some of these issues that are happening in other states, and realizing that homelessness in Minnesota isn't the same as homelessness in California. And for us to try and step into another state, under our own employment program model would A, be logistically incredibly challenging. And B, we wouldn't necessarily know the best way to support the youth homeless population in those states. By relying on the nonprofits, the experts, we can trust that our dollars are going to be better utilized by supporting organizations that already have kind of a foundation underneath them and are able to really relate to their own community and relate to the needs of the homeless young people in their city.
Awesome. We have some businessy questions, kind of around it, or the supply chain issues, if they've seen any and how it's impacted you, but also that kind of ties into another question is what made you choose your specific manufacturers and what did you learn in that process? And maybe did your choice then impact how you're now operating with the issues we're facing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to start with how do we find our manufacturer? My business partner, Sam Harper, and we began to run full steam ahead at launching this business right after both of us graduated from college. Meaning anytime I reached out to a manufacturer, they didn't take me very seriously. I got rejected several times in terms of trying to set up new manufacturing for this business. And it started to be a really big issue in terms of our timeline. We wanted to start and launch this company before the holiday season. And we recognized that if we didn't, we probably wouldn't have a company. We needed to capitalize on that holiday period, that Q4 period where people are shopping more, specifically for socks even. Half the world's socks are still sold from October through December every year. So the way that we actually found our manufacturer, first of all, we were committed to American manufacturing. That was something that we had in terms of our value propositions early on. We wanted to make our products in the United States. So that was kind of something that, it removed several of the potential manufacturing options out there immediately to say, we're going to stick with American manufacturing. But the way that we actually identified our manufacturer was I called this place in North Carolina. It's a generationally owned hosiery mill and said, I want to start a business and I'm flying out there tomorrow to look at your manufacturing facility. And within 12 hours, I was on a plane. I landed in North Carolina. 12 hours later, I flew back to Minneapolis with our first 6 pairs of socks designed, a dozen in hand made, so that we could start producing content to launch the company later that September. So we actually had to fly out to our manufacturers for them to take us seriously. Now, to answer the supply chain question, I'm really happy we chose American manufacturing. That is something that benefited us in the last 2 years more than I could have ever imagined, and not necessarily from a consumer sentiment standpoint. I mentioned surveys that we run. We run surveys all the time through our website, and one of those is, why do you buy from Hippie Feet? The number one most popular response was because of your mission. I want to support your mission. The number 2 was because of how we make our products, meaning the materials we use. So all of Hippie Feet's socks are made from sustainable materials whenever we can source those materials. 85% of a given pair of socks from Hippie Feet is made with recycled content. We use recycled yarns that come from fabric waste to make our products. The number 3 reason that people buy from us is the actual design of the products. And number 4 was the American manufacturing. So in terms of like consumer sentiment, the American manufacturing isn't ranked as high in terms of what they value. But it is something that we benefited from in the last 2 years because we saw how supply chain issues were affecting other apparel brands, sock brands included, in terms of getting their materials into the United States. So we saw our turnaround times about double. And the reason they doubled was because of where some of our yarns are sourced. Our recycled yarns come from Spain. And then we do source a few of our synthetic yarns. We do have about 15% synthetic material in any given pair of socks. Most socks can't avoid it. It's things like elastic and nylon, generally to hold the socks together and for some kind of logo type elements that are requiring a stronger yarn to knit. So that is where we saw some of our delays coming from, is when we were trying to source yarns from overseas. But the supply chain issues that we dealt with were not even close to those that were sourcing all of their materials and products from overseas. I have friends that own companies that are sourcing from China and from Vietnam, and they had some really, really expensive importing fees to deal with. The price of a container from China went from like $2,000 at the start of 2020 to as high as like 10 or 15 a few months ago. So they had to cover those costs. So they really had a greater kind of negative impact from some of the supply chain issues that the world saw in the last 2 years than Hippie Feet did, simply because of where we were producing and where we were sourcing a lot of our products. Yeah. So does that answer that question completely?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah. Kind of related on the business side still, kind of another two questions together is, one, how did you develop the actual business structure? So social enterprise, LLC, maybe where did you learn which model you should go with? And then kind of tied to that is now, what do you do for marketing now that you're kind of a established business? What is your current efforts? Do you want to do something else? Things that you've learned along how to promote yourself?
Yeah, so Hippie Feet is registered as a general benefit corporation in the state of Minnesota. Not to be confused with the B Corp badge. That is a private organization that is essentially similar to what USDA organic and that label would mean. It's something that we will most likely pursue in the future, although it is a very expensive and time-consuming process just to get a nice little B slapped on your website. So we are set up as a general benefit corporation. My business partner and I still own 100% of the company, so we file as an S corp. What was the second half of that question, Brandon?
Kind of now it's more so on what kind of marketing do you do in this, and now that you're kind of a company?
Yep. So we are running purchasing ads through social media. That is where Hippie Feet does the majority of its revenue. It's through e-commerce sales. Now we ignored SEO early on for about 2 years, and then we realized how stupid we were for ignoring SEO and spent a lot of time and energy trying to build out our SEO. So we do get a lot of organic traffic from SEO, both from an e-commerce standpoint and from a B2B standpoint. We do about $500 a day in sales over the fourth quarter, just in organic traffic coming from our SEO efforts over the last few years. But where we really see SEO having a major impact, especially in the off season, what we would consider Q1 through Q3, is from our B2B sales. So when it comes to e-commerce, we are primarily purchasing ads through Facebook and Instagram. I'll touch more on how complicated that has gotten in a little bit here. But the SEO helps benefit us from a B2B standpoint. You could all search eco-friendly custom socks on your web browsers right now, and in the top 4 results, you're going to see Hippie Feet. So when people are looking to build custom socks or create custom socks, mostly corporations, people that are looking to give promotional products away as gifts, kits for new hires, some folks resell them. If you're looking for custom socks made that have your logos and branding, but you still value, environmentally friendly produced products, you're going to find Hippie Feet. And so we do a lot of inbound sales from our custom sock business or B2B business because of our SEO. We also, of course, have a pretty heavy outbound sales effort for our B2B business. I'm happy to report that the last 2 months were our most successful outbound and inbound efforts from a B2B standpoint. And our B2B business really does kind of do all the heavy lifting in the first few months of the year. We spend a good chunk of change every month on advertising just to keep our kind of sales funnel really refreshed, keep getting more traffic, keep getting new eyes on our website so we can retarget them later on, especially over the fourth quarter when we know we have a higher likelihood of conversion. But B2B is where we do a lot of our sales and revenue in the first 8 to 9 months of the year. And then the fourth quarter is where we see our e-commerce business really catch up. I mean, we'll do several $100,000 over the fourth quarter alone, which is where we see most of our growth come from in terms of revenue and profitability. Now, paying for ads on social media, has gotten a lot more complicated in the last 2 years than it has in the years prior. I always like to talk about the golden age of e-commerce as being 2012 to 2014. That was where Facebook and Instagram hadn't quite realized the value that they have in terms of their ability to generate organic traffic and then produce sales from that organic traffic. Back then it was not unheard of to spend $1 on Facebook and make 11. I'd be a very wealthy person today if that was the ratio that we were getting in terms of our return on ad spend. Today, it's more in that 2.5 to 3 range, and that's for most companies. That's for some of the biggest advertisers out there, even, and that is because of the iOS 14 updates. We don't have a fraction of the data that we used to in terms of trying to target customers through the internet. Apple made it so that third-party apps can't track people's data anymore. And when you have an iPhone and they push that update, only 4% of the world's iPhone users said, yes, you can have my data and share it with third-party apps. So we lost a lot of our data that we have on customers, and it has made our ad strategy more costly. So we've had a couple of creative solutions to that ad strategy. And one of those solutions that has been working for us so far is collaborations, leveraging artists and influencers, people that kind of resonate to our mission and to our company values, that we can partner with and say, hey, you design a pair of socks, we'll sell it on our website. You market that pair of socks to your following, drive that traffic to our website. Now we have the data on the customers that we own through our website. We can retarget them later, but we're also seeing revenue come from the sale of those collaborative products. So that is a way that we've been able to offset some of the seasonality that our e-commerce business typically sees. And it's something that we'll continue forward with. We have 4 collaborations set up for the next 2 months. My goal is to have at least 1 collaboration a month. Some months we'll try and aim for 5. It really depends on kind of what we have going in terms of campaigns that month. But the goal here is to really leverage other people's audiences, to convert those audiences into our own customers, and to be able to retarget that audience later down the road once e-commerce sales are picking up for the fourth quarter.
Awesome. If anyone has a question that they want to ask in person, you can go ahead and raise your hand and unmute yourself. You can do that with your own power. I've bestowed that to you. Kind of along the lines of the future, what do you see for the next 5 to 10 years? Does that include international? You're in Costa Rica right now, so is there a favorite spot maybe?
Yeah, so we don't put a whole lot of effort into selling internationally right now. We have still not captured a significant enough market here in the United States to try and set our sights for overseas. So our goal is to continue to try and capture more of the market share here in the US. But we do sell internationally. We are actually selling more internationally because of our collaborations. We're working with artists and influencers around the world. We had a collaboration in December of last year that was with a artist out of Singapore. So we saw, more international revenue and more international sales coming from that collaboration than we did the entire year prior, just on our own efforts. So we do sell internationally. We just don't sell a whole lot, and we're not going to continue to put a bunch of effort into selling internationally. In terms of where I see Hippie Feet growing over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to expand our product line. I really like socks, of course, not just as like a fashion statement, but as like a product to sell. Socks are light, they ship cheaply, and they don't take up a lot of space. Not things that I thought about when launching a sock company, but things that I'm very grateful for now that we are a sock company. So when I talk about, expanding into different apparel options, I'm not looking forward to the increased cost of warehousing those apparel options, not looking forward to the increased SKUs of those apparel options. We have 2 sizes of socks versus the 4 to 6 that you would need for apparel. But we do have revenue coming from our apparel sales, and it's a really good way for us to increase our average order value over the fourth quarter. This last year, we released a collection of knitwear. We've been doing sweaters for a couple of years, but this last year, we really saw our sweater sales take off. As well as other apparel sales that we did through collaborations. We had the opportunity to work with Minnesota Vikings Pro Bowl linebacker Eric Hendricks last fall. Eric designed a collection of socks and a matching set of apparel to go with each pair of socks. That collaboration is something that we still house on our website. We are coming to its kind of the end of its cycle here pretty soon, but we've generated probably $40,000 to $50,000 of revenue simply from the sale of those apparel products, not even including the socks. The apparel products alone have really seen a lot of support. And so it's telling us that we should produce more apparel products. The sweaters that I mentioned, we sold all of the sweaters that we released by the end of the year. Some of them weren't released until, the middle of December. So those are things that we are going to continue because we've had a lot of success with them. We're selling sweaters for $98 where we sell socks for $18. So it really helps drive that average purchase value and is something that we will continue to expand upon as we grow. On the mission side of things, I'm really excited to explore this new 50% of profits donated model. I think it would be incredible to have key partners in key areas of the country, the LAs that I mentioned, the Seattle, Denver, Austin, New York, where you see a lot of homelessness. I would really want to focus our efforts on setting up relationships with nonprofits that we can continue those relationships and start to have this like really massive and measurable impact in those cities. To really kind of focus on sponsoring an organization out in LA that the one in particular at my friend's place that we'll be announcing a partnership with here later at the end of the month or at the start of April, they lost their funding for an employment program due to the pandemic. They had to wipe out their employment program. So our goal is to step in and refund that employment program. So to be able to say that you are a sole funder or sole provider to a program that has a deep impact on youth experiencing homelessness in a different state than your own, I think that is an incredibly cool thing to try and accomplish, and something that we will always continue to prioritize as our mission. We got to be a profitable business to be able to operate said mission. But to be able to focus on the impact that the mission has and to do so in states that aren't Minnesota, I think is going to be a really cool thing for us to explore in the future here.
Brian, you can go ahead and.
Okay, just a personal question, Mike.
Hey, Brian.
How's it going?
It's going again. Nice to see you.
Yeah, and the last time I talked to you, you still had some problems with your head. How's that going?
Oh, I get headaches every day. I've just learned to live with them.
Oh.
Yeah, you still have symptoms from a head injury like that, but you just kind of learn to power through. And I don't take Tylenol really because I think too much Tylenol is going to be bad for me in the long run anyway. So I just kind of have learned to power through, and caffeine helps some days and it hurts others. So it's just kind of a learning game in terms of my own body. I have to just really understand, what brings those headaches on. One of the things that I know brings those headaches on is not enough sleep. So I'm really committed to 8 hours of sleep every night if I can. Obviously a lot more difficult over the holiday season when things are really, really pumping around here. But unfortunately, yes, I still have some symptoms. They're not as nearly as bad as they were right after the accident. And I was at a point there, I was having migraines every day, like the type of migraine that you had to go like shut yourself in a dark space and hide under the covers and pillows. But thankfully those aren't as frequent, but the headaches are, and just kind of learn to live with them at this point.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping you'd say that they're all gone, but
I wish.
I wish.
No.
Oh well.
Yeah.
Well, good luck with it.
The brain fog is less common these days. That's probably was my least favorite symptom. Just feeling like things weren't firing as quickly or effectively as they should. That is not something I deal with very often these days. So I'll take headaches over the brain fog any day.
Okay.
Sherry.
Hi, Michael. Welcome back. It's always fun to see you.
Sorry.
Quick question, and sorry if I missed this. What percentage of your sales are online versus in a physical location? And then second part of the question is, for the online options, do you allow your customers to level up or donate extra to your cause?
Oh, Sherry, we are looking into that currently. With this, we actually haven't announced this model change yet. We are still working on the messaging. We realize that making a change like this is exposing yourself to feedback. And we want to make sure that we are able to message this pivot in a way that our customer sees and recognizes the same way that we do, that it is actually going to have a larger impact on youth experiencing homelessness, not just dollar-wise, but geographically, number of young people that these nonprofits are able to service compared to how many young people we were able to service. So we haven't yet messaged this, but one of the things that we would like to be able to give our consumers the option for is to donate additionally. If you go to Cub and you spend $45.73 on groceries at checkout, they're going to ask if you want to round up your purchase to give back to whatever charitable cause they're supporting there. That's a similar type of option that we have now. And I think, whenever I'm at Cub and they ask if I want to round up my change, it's like, yeah, okay, fine. It looks cleaner on my credit card bill anyways. So that is something where I think we would actually see a pretty cool benefit of. I also think that one of the strengths that we have of having gone through the process of donating socks, realizing that wasn't enough, doing pop-up employment, realizing we could do more, doing a 6-month job training program, recognizing, hey, we can actually still have a deeper and larger impact if we just give money to the experts. I think that makes us an expert in terms of who we choose to partner with. And we can reach out to organizations that are already giving money and say, hey, will you match our year's contribution? Or for our Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend to say, hey, we're going to do the most revenue we'll do in the next 3 days compared to any 3-day period over the course of a year. Would you match our charitable contribution from this kind of period of time? People like the Bush Foundation, right? The poll ads, they give a lot of money every year. They're always going to give money every year. Why not reach out to them and say, hey, we know where this money will have deep impact on youth experiencing homelessness. You're already supporting causes that relate to youth experiencing homelessness. Why don't you match our donation? It's a way for us to continue to have a larger financial impact without necessarily being the sole drivers of those donations. We can ask our consumers to donate. We can ask partners to donate. So I really see our ability to create a larger pool of money to give away at the end of every year as being better through this model. And of course, we'll see if we want to ask our consumers to chip in or round up to do so. The percentage of sales question, this time of year, let me just do some quick math. 80% of our sales are coming from B2B. That is accurate to the last 2 months specifically. That will probably continue. My guess is that by the time we get to September, it'll be about 70% of our sales coming from our B2B efforts compared to our e-commerce efforts. And then from September to October, that pendulum is going to swing, and it's going to swing hard. We typically finish our year with 60% of our revenue coming from e-commerce and 40% of our revenue coming from B2B. So it's just to show you how seasonal socks are and why we're addressing that seasonality through these collaborations, through e-commerce, and with expansion of our product line. But I really, it's funny to see how your efforts in terms of revenue are coming from one channel for 9 months of the year, and then you get to the holiday season and that flips like as fast as you can possibly imagine. So year over year, we're about 60% e-commerce and 40% B2B.
Abigail, you can unmute.
Hi, Michael. I just want to say, I'm super inspired by everything that you've done and your business and how specific your mission is, and that you've pivoted to grow that mission and to do it even better throughout the years that you've been in business. But I just want to ask, what advice do you have for any young entrepreneurs out there? I actually did my freshman year the Innovation Challenge, just like you did, and have a small coffee shop. So what?
All right.
What? Any advice that you have for any young entrepreneurs or small businesses out there? So, yeah.
Yeah, you've already crossed off like the first thing on my list of recommendations to entrepreneurs, which is just start. Just go do the damn thing. Be ready to fail, right? Like that's a part of being an entrepreneur, is be ready to fail. I've failed probably 1,000 small times, and I'll fail another 1,000,000 small times. I use the word small failures intentionally because try and fail small. Learn fast, fail small. Get as much information as you possibly can about the people that you're selling your products to, whether it's coffee or your next venture. So be able to kind of really communicate with the people that you're trying to make your customers. Take all the feedback that you possibly can, and also leverage the fact that you're a student. My God, there are so many people just trying to help you and want to see you succeed. It is amazing how much you can get out of your faculty and advisors at River Falls. They are going to drop everything that they are doing to answer your questions, to support you, take advantage of their office hours, take them out to coffee. You run a small coffee shop, give them a free coffee, get some advice, That's something where I really found that interaction with my advisors and professors to be tremendously valuable. I still have conversations almost once a month with the advisors that I worked with at River Falls through the Innovation Challenge and while launching Hippie Feet after graduation. They have always answered my calls, they've always answered my texts, and they always offer great insight. So really tap into your kind of student network. Really leverage the fact that you have a plethora of faculty that just want to see you successful and will help you be successful whichever way that is, whether that's finding new challenges to compete in to win some seed funding for your business, or if it's just connecting you to somebody that might be a good resource down the road. So I would say just really leverage your time as a student, because it gets so much harder when you're not a student.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Kind of a question, you maybe have kind of touched on it, but since other companies are similar to the mission to the homeless, what makes you different and distinctive? How have you been able to really communicate that to make Hippie Feet what it is today, and leveraging that to move it into the future?
Yeah, so we have I saw someone mentioned my arch nemesis in the chat, Bombas. We have a couple of competitors, not just in the sock space, but we have one in particular that is a charitable sock company. They still operate under the buy one give one sock donation model. There was another buy one give one company that actually went under last year. There is another company based in Texas that does have an employment program just for general people experiencing homelessness. We have outgrown them at this point. We are larger than them at this point. So our number one competitor in the space is going to be Bombas. Bombas is doing good work. I think we're doing better work. And I think that it's something that honestly we'll never compete with Bombas. They were a Shark Tank success. They launched in that sweet spot for e-commerce that I mentioned, where they were able to leverage the just kind of insane ROAS that people were getting on Facebook. They have raised, I believe, $200 million in funding. They can pay to acquire customers in a way that I cannot. Having known somebody that was close to the inner circle of Bombas, I know that there was a point where they were spending $86 to acquire a customer, and their average order value was $83. They were losing money to get you to buy from them, but they could do it because they had a retention campaign. Their goal was to get you into the Bombas universe and create you a Bombas customers for life, and they were really good at doing so. So we recognize we're never going to compete with them on a just dollar for dollar that business standpoint, but from a mission standpoint, we have a more impactful mission, and I can be very confident about that. Socks are still one of the most requested articles of clothing at shelters. However, Hanes donates millions of pairs of socks every single year. Just about every church organization in the country has a sock drive around the holiday season where they ask their members to bring socks in. They donate socks to homeless shelters. Bombas has donated 50 million pairs of socks in the last 10 years. There are 4 million people experiencing homelessness on any given night in the country, the entire United States. That means Bombas has given more than 10 pairs of socks to every person experiencing homelessness. Sure, people burn through socks, but I feel like that is a lot of money thrown at addressing symptoms of homelessness. Why do we keep giving the homeless community donated items? Why do we keep giving the homeless community donated food? Why are we more concerned about building like temporary shelters where they throw a cot on the floor and that's their bed for a night, and they may not have that same bed the next night because there's an abundance of people experiencing homelessness and a lack of shelters and a lack of beds? To me, it seems like a marketing effort more so than it does a deeply driven mission effort. So I could stand up our model against Bombas any day. I could argue that our model is more impactful. There are people that are no longer experiencing homelessness that credit Hippie Feet's employment program. If we were to be able to change the life of one person experiencing homelessness versus donate 50 million pairs of socks, I would choose the one life. I think the ability to have or to change individual outcomes will always be more impactful than giving somebody a tangible good because they need it, because they're living on the streets. I think that Hippie Feed's model and mission is one that is always focused on having the deepest impact on youth experiencing homelessness, whereas Bomba's mission is to sell as many pairs of socks as possible so they can then give away as many pairs of socks as possible. To me, that doesn't seem very morally correct. And so from a mission standpoint, I can argue that our mission is better than Bomba's telling blue in the face.
And then wrapping up here, we have kind of one final question. I guess I'm kind of curious about this too, is with the kind of each pivot here quickly, how have you been able to fund it? I mean, has that been just something that you've just had the sustainable business to do that, or did you struggle with that?
Yeah, how have we been able to fund this? So I won $22,500 in seed funding from the Wisconsin Big Idea Tournament. My business partner and I probably threw in $5,000 around the same time out of our own pockets. Since then, we have bootstrapped it. The first couple of years were really damn hard. We actually, admittedly, we did a lot of our revenue from in-person sales events. Looking back at those in-person sales events, I hated them in the sense that, you know, you're throwing away weekends to go set up at like a art show or fair and selling your wares to people that are interested enough to talk to. But I also recognize that is where we learned a lot about our customer. Being able to have those face-to-face experiences really helped us learn who was buying from us, why they were buying from us, and what they wanted to see from us in the future. All those conversations are things that we have applied to our business today. So we were able to kind of get scrappy with how we were just making revenue. You know, over the summer, we would have an event every single weekend, sometimes two. But today we have really been able to figure out our e-commerce strategy in terms of media buying and turning that into revenue. So that is how we are continuing to scale today. It is still bootstrapped. We haven't needed to fundraise. We haven't taken the option of fundraising off the table. However, it's something that if it makes sense at the time, if it allows us to accelerate our growth and accelerate the impact that we have on youth experiencing homelessness, I'll of course explore it. But for now, we haven't needed to fundraise and have been able to just solely finance our business off of our sales.
Awesome. Are there any other final last questions for Michael? Awesome. I don't see any. There's some great Maria shares. Check out Dar James, an artist, Dar's World.
Saw that.
Some good things. Cool. Well, I will turn it over to our acting dean, Dawn Hukai, if she's available.
Yes, thank you so much, Brandon. And thank you, Michael, for joining us today. It's just wonderful how you personify everything we do at the College of Business and Economics and UWRF. We develop dynamic leaders. We connect community, students, and businesses. We inspire innovation, and we fuel economic development to elevate a more equitable and sustainable business ecosystem. So thank you for bringing all of those together in what you've done along the way. We appreciate your coming back. And I just want to give a quick shout out to our programs. We've got business administration, one of the largest majors on campus, with options in finance, management, marketing, professional sales, an economics major, accounting major, graduate program MBA. And then we work in conjunction with our community partners with the St. Croix Valley Business Innovation Center as well. And so thanks to everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Michael. And we hope to continue this conversation into the future. Everybody have a great day. Thank you for joining us.